All right. Hey, everybody. A slight little glitch there. So if you were waiting for a few minutes, you get extra points for hanging in there and hanging tight. So thank you very much. Tonight is a great night to talk sewing, isn't it? That's what we're here for. So I just want to welcome everybody. I got to see people coming in from all over the place. And we are going to be talking about sergers tonight. And in particular, we're going to be talking about some decorative techniques and some extra special things that you can do with your serger. So, hi, everybody. This is the So Tell Me show. Let's Go Sew with Joanne Banco here. And this is where sewing enthusiasts gather to be inspired and to learn more about their machines. That is my goal. That is my mission to help you learn more about your machine so that you can make beautiful things for yourself and to give as gifts. So, hey everybody. Yep. We did have a little gap at the beginning there. So if you were waiting to see what was going to happen after the countdown, you waited a few extra seconds there. And thanks for your patience. So, oh, let me see. I got to say hi to a few people. I see Anne is here. I see Maria. I see Carolyn. I see Julianne. I see Cindy King. I see Karen, Linda, Christy. Hey, Reen. Reen Wilcoxon is here. So that is always a pleasure to see my friend Reen here. Reen does so many live shows of her own, and it's always fun to have your own friends here, both that do live shows and just like to watch live shows. So, how many of you like to watch live shows? Give me a yes in the chat if that is the case for you. So I hope you are here tonight with eager minds and inquiring minds to learn more about what you can do with your serger. I have got a wonderful, incredible guest here with me tonight. So without any delay, I'm going to go ahead and welcome my friend Amy Bauman from
Hi, Miss
Amy's
Joanne.
Sew and Quilt. Hey, Amy, say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody. I'm Amy from Amy Bachman Sew and Quilt in beautiful Harmony, Pennsylvania, just north of the city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and also Amy Sews, which is where we do most of our serging classes.
Amy, you have a great place there. I've got to get there in person one of these days, but I've seen lots and lots and lots of pictures, and I
Thank you.
always really just wish I was sitting in one of those seats or maybe standing in front of the classroom. That would be fun too.
Girl, then my door is open. You can come do anything you want here.
That would be fabulous. We got to make plans for that. So everybody's saying hi to Amy. You got lots and
Hey,
lots of friends here,
everybody.
Amy. I know
Hey,
that
Miss
for
Birdie.
sure.
Yeah. We posted it all over all the sites today. So
Fantastic. So we
and
got
make sure
people.
you like and follow her and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'll be your PR person.
Aw, thank you. I appreciate that. Oh, I got to give a couple more shout outs. I got Emily's here from Nevada, and Judy is here from Texas. Charlotte tells me she does love to watch live shows. Marianne Tupper, she likes to watch live shows too. And I see a whole bunch of yeses in there. And Marianne likes to take notes too. So good, smart move. Smart move, Marianne. There's always just so much information. And, we say this a lot, but it bears repeating. Gone are the days where you had to travel somewhere to have the enjoyment of visiting with other sewing friends and learning from, someone who's teaching something. But we still like to do those in-person events. It's just that, I don't know if my friends from Texas would be able to necessarily hop on over to Pennsylvania for an event. So this is the next best thing for sure. And
Yeah, I agree that we still have several classes in the store, but people are hesitant of having those 80, 90 people around them in one group. So we've been doing a lot of online classes.
Well, I love teaching face to face. I've been teaching in my local brother dealer for well over 25 years. Same spot, same day, same time, and some of the same people, believe it or not. And even though, over the years I've had the privilege to travel a lot and, doing, of course, online now, I still, once a month, I'm there at my local dealer and I'm teaching classes face to face there. So that's something I would really miss if I didn't have the opportunity to do that. So I know you've got a lot going on at your place. So
There's always something going on here.
all right, Amy, today is Serger Day. I don't know if I filled you in on all the details, but last month when I did the So Tell Me show, I did a Q&A session on surging, and we kind of covered a little bit of the basics. Now, my idea with these shows is by no means to give you a Serger crash course. It's kind of to give you the flavor of what a Serger can do and show a lot of the potential, and of course give a lot of tips and some nitty gritty information. But I know you've got even more nitty gritty information. We'll save that for just a little bit later that you're going to share with everybody. But the whole idea here is to really, like I said, to educate and inspire at the same time. So in my previous show, I had a whole lot of samples of actual things that I have made on the Serger. A lot of them were garments. And I wonder in the chat if you tell me if that's the reason you bought your Serger initially, because you were a garment sewer. Amy, do you think that that's the case most of the time?
It is probably, I'll say 90% of the time, or you're a seam finisher, and then you use it just for basic seam finishing. But the new Sergers have made everything so easy now. I mean, we do piping, zippers, quilting, piecing. We do everything with our Serger.
Yeah, you're not kidding. It's really, when I was planning for this second show, I couldn't help but think that there could be 10 more easily because
Yeah.
I was thinking about just, certain stitches that you could go on and on and on with what you could do with just certain specific stitches, like the rolled hem, for example.
Right.
So, and then accessory feet. There are so many accessory feet.
It's amazing what's out there now.
That really just, again, the whole idea with this is to make your sewing or your serging or your embroidery or your quilting or your crafting, whatever it is, faster, maybe easier for sure.
Cleaner, yeah.
And more fun and more streamlined. So, even if you're not maybe after the fastest way to finish something, I enjoy the process. So I'm not necessarily counting the hours that I'm spending, but you want it to be streamlined and efficient so that you can, get to the result and be happy and satisfied when you're done. Yeah. So Anne tells me she bought hers for sewing clothes. Mary Ann says the same thing. Joyce says the same thing. Jennifer, let's see. Jennifer says that she is a quilter and was given the Serger by another quilter when she got a new one. Yeah. Oh, wow, Amy. That is amazing. Hold that up. Let me pull that up closer here so everybody can see it.
That's the back and that's the front.
Woo-wee.
So that's quick and easy piecing with your Serger.
Okay, you went too fast. Bring it back up there again. So bring it back up there again so we can admire the beauty of that. Wow.
And there's the back.
Wow. That is just amazing. Absolutely amazing.
So it can do all kinds of, but it's quick. And if you, face it, if you make something for kids that they're going to lay on the floor and they play fort, they kill each other with it, the Serger is the perfect way to go.
You're right. So
that was I did a 4 thread on that, I believe.
Okay. In the previous show, I showed a couple samples of things that were done where I actually quilted it and serged it even at
the same perfect time.
So
and this is just a simple bow tie quilt.
Let me bring it up again. So
I don't mean to torture you.
We all want to see it.
So it's dimensional, right? You can see the bow ties are puffy.
Oh, so, now let's see the back. Let's see the back.
Okay. Let's hope it's nice and neat. This was my test sample. See, it's not pressed, so it's just put together.
Yeah, I love it.
But even right where these knots go, there's not a whole lot of bulk there, so it's good.
Yeah. Patricia says she's also a quilter and got a Serger and made several table toppers to start. Nice. Yay. flat finish seams. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Everything is all right. There's one more, and then I'll let you do your thing. So this was just a reversible flip and strip, or strip and flip, whatever you want to call
Yeah,
it.
so you quilted it at the same time that you pieced it
Yep.
and sewed the seams. Yeah.
And we did a wave edge finish, even though my serger doesn't have a button for a wave. You can do a
Uh,
wave finish on any serger.
oh, let's talk about that.
Okay.
Why don't you go ahead and while we're on that subject, give a little bit of an explanation on that. Tell us
So
first of all what a wave is.
So
Maybe you
a
want to show
wave
that again.
stitch is when the lower looper thread is pulled to the upper side. Okay. And when your sewing machine or your serger, that's we're at sergers, when your serger has that button, certain brands have a button to do a wave stitch, and they're pretty expensive, but all you have to do, right? So I just rest my hand on the top of my serger and I just hold on to the upper looper thread and I just go like this at the same pace. It's enough tension to pull that lower thread over to the top, and you've got a wave stitch.
Yeah. Yeah. So you use contrasting thread. You use a
Yep.
different color in the upper looper and a different color and another contrast thread in the lower looper. And then basically what you're doing is I'm going to use a crazy word, you're whacking out the tension.
All right. I
You're
am
making the
absolutely,
tension go crazy.
I'm pulling like a string on a puppet, just like that. It's just enough tension. And make sure your thread's the same weight, top and bottom, too. That makes it look a little better.
Yep.
But
Yep.
you don't have to have fancy to have fun with your serger.
You can do so many things if you are
Yeah.
brave enough to just try, right?
I agree. I
Yep.
agree.
And we'll talk a little bit about actually doing samples tonight. Barbara
Okay.
loves the table topper. Reen says she needs to learn all of this. Well, Reen, you are the expert when it comes to uh, many things in the hoop embroidery designs, for sure. In particular, I know Amy's a friend of yours
She's
too,
the
so
queen. There is
we
nobody
can
out there.
brag on
There's
Reen.
nobody that does in the hoop like Rain from Embroidery Garden. Nobody.
That
She's
is true.
genius.
But when it comes to serging, a lot of people really, even if they use a serger regularly, I find that they haven't experimented with kind of the outside the box type things.
I agree.
And part of it is because I want to hear your take on it after I throw this out there. But I found, because I've been serging since I was 16 years old, believe it or not. Started in a custom drapery factory when I was still in high school, and then went on to fashion school. And in fashion school, we bought the very first models that were available that weren't industrial. They were kind of,
Right.
you know, I wouldn't say almost semi-industrial, but they were freestanding, and they weren't available anywhere except through industrial dealers, which
Yeah.
that's who supplied all our school machines. So I got one of the very, very first ones, and it was more basic than anything else. But wasn't long before then Sergers came out on the market, and I got one of the ones that had multiple stitches on it, and I just loved experimenting with it. So I was never afraid to try anything on it, and the whole idea of decorative serging and creative serging kind of exploded in the 80s, because they became so commonplace that people were, buying them. Decorative threads were everywhere. And then I don't know, I want to hear if you agree with me, but shortly after that, it's like everything hit a peak and then everybody had a serger, and then sergers kind of fell off the map, and especially decorative serging just kind of went flat because people just, kind of lost a little bit of the spark of newness. Do you
Yeah.
think that happened?
I agree. I think everybody didn't want to be fancy anymore, with all the sparkly threads. And sergers aren't like, if you invest in a serger, it isn't like you trade it in every 3 or 4 years like you do with your sewing machine, right? They kind of maintain their same
Right.
status.
Right.
But we've seen a huge insurgence since the air threading, people getting new sergers, and they handle decorative threads really well. But we use a lot of decorative threads here, but not necessarily like flashy on clothing or that kind of thing. But sergers are becoming very popular again, which makes me very happy.
Yep, I agree 100%. And the whole kind of mixture of decorative threads has kind of overlapped with embellishment threads now,
Mm-hmm.
because that's become popular. and embroidery threads for sure. So we'll talk about a few different specifics tonight, but it's interesting to see what everybody's saying about why they bought a serger.
Yeah.
Anne says nothing specific, but she used it for napkin edges, edges of tea towels. And oh, now that's pretty neat. And Anne also uses hers as the edging that she crochets into.
Yeah.
Ooh,
So that's kind of a
beautiful.
crocheted finish where it's just using some wash away stabilizer and doing row after row of decorative stitching. So when the napkin washes out,
Yeah.
these are those crazy tree napkins that I think I've been making since 1990. The ones that this is kind of crappily folded, but ones
Yeah.
kind of fold
I
up, these
know.
circular napkins, right? So it's a great use for decorative serger thread, um, both upper and lower looper. So it gives you a really nice finish. It gives you something fun to play with. And sometimes I'll sit with my serger when I want to do something, but I'm not making anything. I practice my inside
Just
outside
play.
corners and
You're
will
just
this
playing.
thread fit in my looper? That's my new mantra. Will it fit in there?
And what thread was that, Amy?
So that is a thread called Glamour from Wonderfill.
Okay.
Is it a Glamour? Hold on. Glasses on, glasses off. Yeah, it's Glamour thread from Wonderfill.
Okay. I'm going to bring you up so we can
And
see
so
that.
you can put it both in your upper and your lower looper.
Yep.
So it's not
Yep.
super heavy. It's a little light. I'm going to say it's probably a 10 weight or a 12 weight. It's not real heavy at all.
And I have some a sample to show with that same brand of thread, but a little different type. This one is called Dazzle. So I'm
Dazzle is a little
thrilled to hear
heavier,
that
right?
you have that. So you carry the Wonderfill threads in your
Yes.
store. Okay. Do you mail order those as well?
So the answer is yes. I will say my the amybachman.com is a little pitiful on the selling side, but if you call the store, we'll FaceTime you with pictures and send you what we have.
Okay.
They
And
may be on there.
I know that's because you really dedicate yourself to, uh, again, hands on and taking care of your customers face to face. And I think that's you deserve a badge of honor for that, for
Thank you.
sure. But so, yeah, don't be afraid, anyone, to give Amy's shop a call and ask her about the threads. And you can, find out what colors she has and which ones that you can actually order to use for your serger or anything else for that matter, for sure.
Darling, it's a 12 weight thread. That's the weight. Somebody just asked what thread weight it was. It's a 12 weight. Yeah, it's a 12 weight.
Yeah, and this particular one doesn't actually have a weight on it. But it's interesting when you get into the whole aspect of decorative threads is there's the brands. I have to tell you, I have a lot of them in my stash, okay, because I've been doing decorative serging for many years. A lot of the actual spools that I have aren't available anymore because they're just not being made. So a company like Wonderfill is really filling in the gaps. And I would say that by and large, what you find, I'll grab another one here. Let me rip the wrapper off of here real quick. Well, I'll just leave it on. What you find are threads that are glittery like this. Of course, this comes in different colors too. And you find threads that have more of a matte finish. Now, I know this looks a little shiny, but it's partially because I still have the plastic wrapper on here and partially just because of the way the light's hitting it. But wouldn't you say that those are kind of the more typical threads? You either got a little bit glittery or a little bit shiny.
Right. Unless you do something like a pearl cotton, like the project I just finished has this thread. It's called Spaghetti. And it just looks like old school crochet cotton. It's very, very thin. But I just want to give you guys a hint. When you're using your slippery threads, make sure you're using your thread nets. It's the one time that you want to kind of give a little support to your thread. So what happens is the thread slides down and wraps underneath the spool and makes your tension go crazy. Then you break your threads and you say a bad word. So you might as well start with your thread nets and get it over with.
It tends to do what I call spilling.
Yeah.
And I got a little tip list that I'm going to throw out tonight.
Perfect.
And I've got a couple other or another alternative idea to the
good
net, but we will definitely talk about that. a little bit more. Now, Barbara's making a really good point. Some reason it's not coming up. There we go. No, that's a different one. This is the one I wanted. Barbara says her first serger was a beast, and it discouraged her. And I would agree that I think again that's one of the reasons why there has been a gap, and now there's a resurgence, no pun intended,
Right.
in people buying sergers, because for a fairly good period of time there, they were hard to use, and
Yes.
then the ease of use started to get better and better. And then, like you mentioned, with the air threading, I think everybody has air threading now, including Brother, which I'm happy to say because I am a Brother ambassador.
I
You
will
are a
tell
Brother
you,
dealer.
the Air Thread 3000 is a wonderful serger, and it is priced right. It's in that $1,300 neighborhood. Depending
Yeah.
on what coast you're on, it may vary a little bit, but it's a terrific serger. I'm very happy with it, and we sell a good bit of them because it's fairly priced for the bang for your buck. Because
Yeah.
Brother always gives you bang for your buck. Yeah.
And I have to tell you, I've had experience with just about every brand of serger out there. And for many years, I had a very basic Brother. And recently, I was given a loan of the Airflow 3000. I did all of the
Yay.
samples that I have in my images tonight on that machine. And
Perfect.
I was, can I say, blown away and be,
Yes.
no pun intended
You're just full
again.
of puns tonight.
But I mean, I actually, and I said this last time, so I'm repeating myself, but I actually won a contest once for threading a 5-thread serger, the fastest in the
Oh,
classroom.
that's awesome.
So I never had a problem, and that was manual, mostly manual stuff. I never had a problem threading a serger. I admit that, but because I did it so much and I taught so many serger classes and had to deal with really difficult ones. However, after using that jet air threading on the new Brother Airflow 3000, I am totally spoiled rotten.
Yes.
Because it threaded even thread like this, kinky, slippery, slinky, thick, with absolutely no issue whatsoever. Yeah. My friend Diane says Style Falcon from Style Falcon says air threading is a game changer. You are absolutely right. Carol, she loves her air threading. Yeah, it just doesn't stop you from doing whatever you want to do because you've got the ability to change your threads in a flash.
And realistically, that takes the frustration out of it. So you can get to your project, you can do what you need to do instead of trying to thread that lower loop or elbow with tweezers and hold your tongue right and put in round needles. If that's your case, you got to just shake that piggy bank loose and treat yourself. Yeah.
But like you said, I mean, they to get an affordable air thread serger like the one Brother's offering.
Right.
Again, I'm biased, you're, but it's, I mean, that is really sweet because you are getting a whole lot of bang for your buck for sure.
Yeah.
Truthmonger says air threading is the best. Marianne says it's so much faster. Absolutely.
Right.
Carolyn says loves her air threading. So much easier to change threads after having. Well, Carolyn, you were in on the market a long time ago too, for sure. And let's see what Joyce said. Joyce has a 1034D. That's a Brother serger that's been popular for many years. And if she moves up, she's going to move up to an air threader. And you won't be sorry, Joyce. I guarantee you that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, we got a question here. Will you repeat how to do the wave stitch on any serger? Why don't you do that real quick? And if you really want details, of course, you can always go back and watch the replay once it comes up.
Yeah, so basically all you're doing is the upper and lower looper have decorative threads in them, contrasting colors, right? Same weight thread. You're going to rest your hand on the top of your serger like this, and you're going to put that upper looper thread between your thumb and your forefinger, and you're not pinching it like you want to break it. You're just giving it extra tension, and you just take a rhythm and you pull it up and release just like you're fly fishing, You
want it to wave from
back to front
to tighter, and then normal to tighter.
Right. So that when you tighten that upper looper thread, it pulls the other guy to the top. And it's usually stuff we don't want to happen. So we're just making it happen on purpose for the wave.
You're right. And I have to say that that's a really popular stitch for finishing edges of quilts and blankets because
Yeah.
it takes the place of doing binding.
Right. I'll try to do a little video this week and I'll let you know so they can go to YouTube and watch it.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great. And you know, maybe this is going to be the start of another collaboration where
That's right.
we'll do something together. We have a little more time to plan it. I did ask you kind of last minute, and I have to say Amy was so good to say yes because she just flew home from far away.
Yes.
And so I appreciate you being here and taking
No
the time for
problem.
sure. Oh, Society, she says she loves the wave stitch. Yep, it is pretty. It is a pretty, pretty stitch. And let's see what Francie said. I know spell check always changes serger to server. Drives me crazy.
Yeah.
With air threading, gave the old one to a young lady with 2 girls. Yeah, that's great. And you know that is a really good point to be able to gift your older serger to somebody, maybe somebody that doesn't have as much difficulty eye-wise threading or finger-wise with dexterity. That's really a great way to help somebody add to their sewing repertoire. Oh, Darlene, good for you. Teach 4
Yay.
acres. Yay for
Love
you.
that.
That is, you 3 cheers. Absolutely. And let's see. Linda says she's had air threading for several years, and yeah, she wouldn't be able to do it without it. I have to say, when it comes to threading as well, Brother has been at the top of the game with that for quite a while because not only do they have the jets for threading the loopers, which are traditionally the trickiest part of the actual mechanism to thread, but they also have needle threaders on some of their sergers, and certainly the new Airflow 3000 has a. I mean, it like I did it the first time, and I didn't even have to look any instructions up, and it worked absolutely perfectly, and it'll thread both the left and the right needle. So,
and you don't have to do them in any order. You just
exactly. That was a real kind of a learning curve for me because I was so used to following the rule that we always had to follow. So I'll say the rule because if you have an older serger, this is really, really, really important. If your serger model and your serger manual says there is no threading order, like the new Airflow 3000, I don't know if there are others out there like that, but if you have a serger that does require a threading order, it's almost always going to be upper looper first, lower looper second, and needles last. And even if the upper and lower looper is a little different from what, from serger to serger, on a standard ordinary serger, which I know many of you still have, you always, 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 always want to thread your needles last.
Right.
If you don't, what happens is the needle threads get trapped as they're coming down and being threaded with the looper thread that's crossing over, and it'll literally snap the looper thread when you start stitching again. So really important to keep tabs on that. And Dawn says she's checking in late, but she's looking forward to learning more about serger. So that's really great. That is really great. So Amy, what would be your top tips for somebody that wants to go a little bit beyond the basics with their serger?
So as far as like starting to create something different, right?
Yeah, just kind of overall, what would you recommend so people kind of get a little bit out of the box of just doing ordinary serging?
Right. So, mostly when we buy it, we do a 3/4 thread overlock or we do a roll hem. That seems to be the what do you want to say? The basics. The end. What everybody buys a serger for was to do a roll hem. So I think my first thing is to understand how your differential feed works. Maybe do some gathering. A lot of sergers come with decorative feet. Maybe it's time to start a piping or gathering or an elastic insertion. So it's still a garment construction, and the foot does most of the work. And so you're not worried about, is the decorative thread right? I guess you want to say am I set up right for it? The foot does most of the work. So this is an example of using the gathering foot and the piping foot.
Yeah.
So that is one of my favorite feet, actually, the gathering feet. But I would say take the next step and learn a construction technique, whether you learn to turn inside corners or outside corners. I think that's the next step. Everybody does a straight line and they go, turning a corner is a huge, especially when you got decorative thread in there for like a placemat or a table runner or something. But that's my take on it. I think is just to take one technique or one presser foot and then build on your 3-thread or your 4-thread serging.
Good thoughts. Really good thoughts. Becky says she would love to make one of those pillows. Well, I think we might have an opportunity for you coming up. We'll be talking about that in just a few minutes. Yeah, we're getting some different comments in here. I won't pull them all up, but of different serger brand preferences. And that's a really good point because, Amy, tell me like how you handle things when you're doing classes. And I know you have a special type of class that you do online, which I want you to explain in just a minute. But how do you handle people that have different brands? How does that kind of wash out?
When we do a Serger class, we call it non-denominational, which means whatever brand you have, you're welcome to bring it to class. But what I ask of you is to have a kind of a working knowledge on how to thread it, because some of them are even tricky for us. I've been serging for over 40 years and selling sergers for over 30 years. So I kind of can figure them all out. But sometimes it's a challenge because it's where I want to make something. I don't want it to be a threading class. But the biggest thing is I want you to buy your dealer first, because if you buy a $500 serger across every brand, it's the same serger. And not all manufacturers make their own sergers. A lot of them are farmed out and they're done by specifications to an after manufacturer. They call it an EOB. And anyway, so that's the first thought. And then we have somebody who comes in with a $6,000 or a $10,000 serger, and they sit next to a $500 serger. And I tell everybody, it's not about how much you spend, it's how much you use it and how much you want to learn to use it. All sergers do basically the same thing. They just come with bells and whistles. So I try to group everybody with the same brand, as they sew, and so they can feed off each other. If they don't know how to do something else does. But mostly the serger classes go really well. Jim Suzio's with me, and Jim has a ton of serger experience. So between the two of us, we usually figure it out. But if you want to really learn when you go to your dealer store and you want to make a purse, you want to make something, make sure you know how to thread it. That's the big deal. And or call and see if you can set it come a little early for them to help you thread it, so class goes easily.
Yeah. Those are really good thoughts, because it is true that like and we're not talking cover stitch machines here, right? That's another whole critter. But when it comes to sergers, they all have many stitches in common. And then, like you said, then there's the bells and whistles that set it apart from,
right.
In pricing for one thing, and in capability.
When it comes to sergers, I'm not an overly bells and whistles kind of girl. I mean, there's sergers out there that I think you're going to use that. And I guess I'll use that wave stitch as an example. You're going to pay to get that button, but you're going to use that button once in your lifetime, and then you're on to the next thing. So I'd rather you spend the most you think you're comfortable afford spending, but that easy threading, easy setup, and make sure your dealer gives you lessons. And that's the big take right here. It doesn't matter how much money you have.
Agree. And Reen makes a really good point. She says, you have to want to learn to use your serger. Yeah. And you're right. And, a lot of people, they kind of leave it in the box or leave it in the corner, and you have to at least get the basics down first. Before you can kind of graduate into other things.
I tell my students, you're going to want to throw it through the window. And when you don't throw it through the window, you figure the light bulb goes off and, okay, I'm good. You're going to reach this pinnacle of, I can't take it one more time. And then you're going to go like, oh, I figured that out. That was easy. So that, you got to get through that hard part. Exactly. It's like the first couple months of marriage, you got to figure it all out. And then you decide what's the right way to go or not.
And one big step leads to the next, one little step leads to the next big step. Kim,
Right.
my friend Kim's here. Kim's one of my local friends, and she says she loves her Janome air threader. And Kim, I don't know, maybe you can answer me in the comments. I don't recall if that was your first Serger. I'm guessing that it was. So you tell me. And then we got a question coming in from Dawn. She says, do all Sergers have additional feet you can buy, like for the decorative stitching? What say you, Amy?
So every manufacturer has feet you can purchase separately, right? The Brother 5234 comes with a gathering foot. I think the new air thread comes with the gathering foot, but mostly they are an additional purchase. Sometimes you'll get a bundle, like a Christmas time, the manufacturers put bundles of feet together, but mostly it is an aftermarket purchase. You know, I'll give you a little inside hint. If you go to buy a new Serger and you're getting ready to spend, your money, it wouldn't hurt to say, hey, can I buy this at a discount? Or I'll take it if you throw that foot in. So I'm probably going to get, flogged by my fellow dealers. But, we all want you to have your Serger, and we want you to, a gathering foot, at least a gathering foot and an elastic foot. But no, they're all extra. And unfortunately, they're all extra. You may get an adjustable blind hem foot with your Serger, which has multiple purposes.
And I'm trying to remember. I'd have to look at my package for the new Janome Airflow, but I think it came with at least 2 extra feet, which is a pretty big deal because, like you said, the Serger feet I think go for, prices better than I do. Around,
I'm going to say $40, $50. I was going to say
40.
Bernina's on the high end, Viking's on the high end, so in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Some Brother feet are only $20. So
Ginny says, Lorraine's encouraging Ginny here for sure.
We are all enablers.
Kelly's got a great comment. Always find the fun dealership, buy the best you can afford from that dealer. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So now we're talking about classes, and one of the reasons I invited you here tonight was, certainly because I knew you had a lot of experience with Sergers and a lot of great ideas and thoughts and some great samples too. But our friend Caroline here said she was afraid of her Serger until she started taking your Power Serger box classes. She's not afraid of it anymore, and it's even encouraged her to experiment on her own. So
that's awesome.
Amy, tell us all about what is the Amy's Power Serger box classes and who can benefit from those and how can they take advantage of that.
Oh, thank you, Carolyn. That's so sweet. I have such a great community of Serger box owners. And so what it is, it's a subscription box, and it comes every other month. And then you get your box in the mail, and it is filled with the supplies that you need. This was the napkin box that we did with the crochet napkins. I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but you get your fabric, your decorative thread, the tip sheet. And so we've made the pillow, we made the quilt. This was May's class. It was 2-thread serging with this little hex frame.
Oh, I love 2-thread serging.
Yeah, so 2-thread, we did the spaghetti thread, and we did flat locking with woven ribbon. So when we mail the boxes every other month, you get a live class. We do a box opening, so you see what you get. And then we do a live class where you're watching in from either Facebook or YouTube. It's private. And then sometimes we do a recorded class, especially if the technique is difficult. We'll record it where there's no chatter. It's, Jim Suzio and I work together and do it in the boxes. So we put the classes together. So you get your tip sheet. You can write all your settings down. You can send us emails. We try to support. We'll check in with everybody. So you just go to amysews.com. Right now, the box isn't open. And what that means is we're just taking emails for the wait list. Because we have so many members, and I'm very grateful for that. We have to pace our supplies every couple months because ordering in huge quantity is getting better. But if I call a manufacturer and say, hey, I need 300 yards of that blue fabric, their eyes roll back in their head. We have to figure it out. So, but we don't ask you to buy anything else. If you don't have a gathering foot, you don't have a piping foot, we show you how to do it with the feet your basic foot that you have. So I want to say it's $65. I could be wrong. It's either 60 or 65. My bad. Because we have a
Okay.
scan and cut box too. And so it's every other month. It's automatically billed. You can cancel at any time. If you hate me or you think it's stupid, you just get off and go do something else. And so there's no long-term commitment. So we just finished this up in May. So July will be our next box. We are doing leggings next box. We've got beautiful fabric, very heavy lycra knit, because I'm a big girl and I like my lycra to work. You know, I don't want anything real skimpy, and I only wear them in the house also, which is a different story. But we want to talk about doing garment. So like I would say every 3 boxes is a garment, and then there's always some sort of project. So,
Okay.
and there's always tips and tricks and that kind of thing.
You've definitely got some people in here that are already doing your
Oh,
Power
wonderful.
Serger box. So let me see if I can find a few of those comments. But we got a couple of things here I'd like to
Yeah, she
bring
got
up.
her 2-thread serger bag done.
Yeah. Oh, Jolan, you told me how to pronounce your name last time, and I'm trying to remember if I did it right. Tell me again. Give me another phonetic pronunciation of that. But she says that opening the box was so much fun.
We try to put something fun in there, a little crazy notion, or there's always an affirmation. And because the Christmas box affirmation was, it says, success is not final, failure is not fatal. It's just fabric. It's just surge on. And if you don't want to make the project, I get it. But they make the technique and they send me pictures. Look, I did my first, 2-thread flat lock, or did my first roll hem. So it's really rewarding. And we chose the serger boxes because the serger classes are kind of, I don't say neglected isn't the right word, but if your dealer doesn't have somebody on staff who likes them or can use them, and everything's about it, people do a lot of embroidery, but we focus on the scan and cut, and we focus on the sergers. And I love my community, and I couldn't be happier. And your support and Reen's support means the world to me.
Well, everybody that knows me well enough here knows that I never recommend anything that I would not do myself or purchase myself. And I know that, what you're doing with the Serger box classes are really very, very valuable. We got a couple questions though. So let's
go.
Get the questions up here. Let's see. Kelly says, is a class during the day or during the evening? So explain just a little bit more how it actually works.
So the live class is 6 p.m. Eastern, but that class is recorded. So as soon as it uploads, you can go and watch it anytime, 24 hours a day. So you don't have to be there, but that's where we're at, 6 p.m. Eastern.
Okay. And then Maritza wants to know, how long is the video available after the lesson?
So once you get through 3 boxes, then it stays there forever if you cancel. If you cancel after box 1, your class kind of goes with it. So if you're there for 3 boxes, which is 2, 4, 6 months, then your classes stay there. You go to Amy Sews, you log in, you go to your library. If I post any extra tips or I do something, I always notified everybody that's in there.
Okay. Because it's every other month.
Yes. So the next one will be July. And we probably have the box subscription open by July. I just need some lead time to get my stuff together.
So the waiting list is basically until either you get more supplies that you're able to, or maybe somebody drops out, and then so their supplies can be allocated.
Right. And we send an email and say, hey, that jump in now. And if you don't want to jump in, stay on the list and you can catch the next round.
Okay.
And again, you can always unsubscribe if the emails if we're annoying. So we don't want to be that at all.
And then Darlene's asking, is it $60 for each box?
Yes. So every other month it's $60. And then I think there's a little bit of shipping on top of that, but yes.
And so that includes the live class, the recorded replay, if you stick with it for at least 3 months, and then the box with all of your supplies.
Right. So it doesn't
exactly.
The box doesn't have like basic serger thread in it. And some boxes are heftier than others, right? And value-wise, we just put a lot of value on the class. And you also get, I laugh, I call them Jim's novels, but this project came with like 42 pages of step-by-step and pictures. And so you get a PDF you can print out and go step by step with us through the video. Or some people are just direction readers.
Yeah. And if you don't know Jim Suzio has been in the educator sewing field for
Ever.
longer than I could possibly remember. He's an expert on so many different things. Got to have him on the show one of these.
Yeah, he's been a blessing. Yeah, you know, he travels some with the original Sewing and Quilt Expos, but when he's not there, he's here. And so I'm like, hey, Jim, let's do this. And so it's been it's been a great partner with helping me get a lot done.
And I got to bring up a couple more comments from fans that are already thinking about it or already done it. Carolyn says it sounds like something fun to do. Caroline says she loves that you teach her how to do the projects with what you have, even if you don't have all of the same equipment that you're showing there.
Yeah.
And Society says she loved making the fitted crimp sheet. So fast and easy. So, wow, that sounds like a great project.
One of my favorite gifts. You put that elastic foot on, you cut out 4 wedges, you zip around it with that elastic foot, and you can have Serger crib sheets out of 100% quilt cotton made, I think it's 1.25 yards maybe. It's so inexpensive compared to buying them at the store.
Yeah. And, you know, like I said, for the $60, you know, you're getting, I mean, a lot of places you would pay that amount just for hands-on class.
Right. I just came back from the West Coast and I was astounded at what they pay for classes in California versus here. Yeah. Right. So, you know, the classes are at least an hour, if not a little more, with that. So, but we try to get you the most to use of what you have. Occasionally we'll throw in a loop and say, hey, this is, you know, if you have a cover stitch machine or you have, you know, there'll be a little extra video for that, because this was the cover stitch insert that they could make to go inside the pillow if they didn't want.
So you're given options.
Yeah, we try to, you know, and again, I understand that economically we're so diverse, and that's fine, because I don't want anybody to feel like they're left out at all.
Yeah. Well, you're so good at all that, really. So we've got a couple more questions. I want to make sure we get them in here. Marcia wants to know, do you tell in advance what the projects are, or is it a surprise?
It's kind of a surprise. We do the box opening ahead of time. If I announce the projects, it would probably be brutal, you know, with I don't want to do that, or I do want to do that, because I say it's about the process, not about the project. Like I said, if you hate the little hex frame, use the hex frame for something else. Yeah. But by goodness, learn how to do the 2-thread, or learn how to do, you know, weave ribbon with a flat lock. So I guess it's more about the process. We just happen to turn it into a project.
Okay. Lorraine wants to know, can you ask questions during the live class?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Darlene says, Society says Jim is a very patient and informative instructor. Jim has a great reputation.
He's a great demeanor. Absolutely. I'm a little wound up. So
Jim balance each other.
Jim's the calm, and I'm like, "Woo, let's do this." And Jim goes, "Just take a breath. We got to get through this first." So we're good together.
Darlene says, "Sounds good. And our friend Stephanie from So Stephanie Says it's like having you sit beside us. Wow, that is a real.
I know. And one of the things I would love to do, and we talk about it, we just have to pull all the pieces together. I would love to rent a big place like Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, or something like that, and have like a 3-day surge along. So
like a Serger camp.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We do camp sew and quilt. And now that COVID's over, we just have to find a new location. So
that would be so much
fun. It would be so much fun. And I would love to meet everybody in person.
That would be great. Let's see. MR says, can you give examples of what might be coming up in the boxes? Now, I know part of this is a little bit of the element of surprise. So when you get your box, it's like, we know getting a present, you know, you don't know what's in there, but
right. We know in July, you're going to get some sort of Lycra and really like Lululemon Lycra, like really nice stuff, and a pattern. We're going to do leggings.
Wow.
And then July, August, September. Oh, we were putting me on the spot. So we did clothing. Well, you know, it's usually I can't even tell you what's coming up actually.
Okay. Well, So
Yeah,
Simon says you're a great instructor. So whatever's in that box, it's
thank
gonna be
you.
a
We're
good
gonna we're gonna be okay. I can show you past examples, but that's um, but usually like a month before, Jim and I are like, okay, we have these supplies. We ordered. What do we order for? We come up with the project. So.
And then Carolyn says, would you please tell us how to sign up again?
So all you have to do is go to amysews.com and it'll say subscription boxes across the top. You click on it. And when you click on the Serger box, it'll say sold out, but add to wait list and just drop your email in there. And then we'll keep you on the wait list. And again, it's always a pass. There's no financial commitment to be on the wait list. You just hang out. And, if you want to join, that's great. And we have our Facebook group, Amy Sews, Facebook, and then Amy Sews YouTube. It's one word, Amy Sews. And then we do some tips, and we do our Make It Mondays on there. And there's all kinds of activity. You can get to know us a little bit.
Okay. And I'll put the link, the direct link to that in the show notes after the show uploads to YouTube.
Okay.
And I'll add that little bit of information so you can,
all right, perfect.
You can find it. So Kelly's asking, how long is the class monitored for folks that can't watch live? I think you already answered that. It's if you sign up for at least 3 subscription boxes,
they're there forever.
You can go there anytime, all the time, and rewatch it, right?
And in all honesty, if you truly have a financial hardship, we let you out. I mean, we know last year when everything started going crazy, we expected it, and I would never want you not to eat because you're getting a Serger box. So, we're very kind and we want to work with everybody. But usually after 3 months, you can log into Amy Sews, watch them in your library at any time. And we're talking now about taking past classes like this and just selling them as a one-off class.
Okay. So that was okay. We got 2 questions here. So I'm going to take this one off and put this one up, and then we'll come back to Deborah's. But so
yes, Judy, we're putting together past boxes and
based on availability, right?
Yes, and just kind of sell them as one-offs. And then someone asked about Canadian funds. If you don't want the box, you can get the class only, which I think is $37 or $38. So our friends in Canada, in Europe, and Australia, they're everywhere. Just get the class.
Okay, so there's the question there. Deborah's asking, is the class in Canada funds? Well, it would be in dollars is what's on your website.
Right, exactly.
So it would convert to whatever when you.
But Deborah's had to join the class only until the international shipping has gotten so crazy. And then we did it. And then someone had to pay import fees or something. And I don't understand how it really works. And so it was just a bad situation. So that's why we do the class only option. And you can join the class only option. I'll have to check anytime, but I want to make sure.
Okay.
At least get on the list and we'll let everybody know.
If you get back to me on that, I'll add that in the show notes too. So people can look after the show comes up on the replay.
If Ed's watching.
So Jane's already on the wait list. And then Kelly's clarifying her question is, she means if you have a question during the replay, how would you ask?
Oh, so I do monitor the comments, every couple of days I look, but you can send an email to support@Amy Sews with your question and I'll get right back to you.
Excellent. And Fran, our mutual friend Fran here says Amy's classes are wonderful.
She's one of my locals. Sure. I love Miss Fran.
Yeah. And Becky's on the wait list too. So
Yay!
Great. Well, I think that is definitely something to consider. Now I put together just a few tips of my own tonight and some pictures. So why don't we look at them together and you can comment on any of them as I'm showing them. Okay. Sound like a plan? I'm just getting a few more comments in here with everybody that's loving what you're already doing here, Amy.
That's awesome. It's very humbling.
All right. So I put together just a few slides I thought we'd talk about. So obviously we know the kind of the theme of this show was to be decorative serging on your serger. Oh yes, absolutely. It is possible and something you absolutely want to play with. So I just did a little review, and I did get a question a little while ago saying, can you recap a little bit? Well, what we've talked about so far tonight is basically just the idea that your serger can do so much more than standard ordinary serger stitches. And then we went into, great detail on Amy's virtual class that is the Serger in a Box class. And you can, go back and watch the replay and learn all the details on that if you missed some of that. But last time I showed some samples just with images here of what I consider to be popular, common, ordinary serger stitches. So there's the 4 thread that we use for sewing a good strong seam. There's a 3 thread that I use regularly for sewing knit garments, because when I do a knit, I generally want a little bit more give, a little bit more stretch, and I don't really need that second needle thread that's holding everything tight and secure. So I switch over to a 3 thread, generally speaking, when I sew knits. Do you do the same thing, Amy?
I definitely do. A 3 thread is a knit for sure.
Okay.
For knits for sure.
And then I like to use a 3 thread for decorative serging too, which will show you. You'll see a couple pictures in just a minute or so here. And then, of course, the 3 thread rolled hem is very popular. Again, when I was thinking about, doing this show, I knew that, you were going to have so much to share and I was only going to have so much time. So I plan on doing another whole show just on the rolled hem, because there's a lot we could talk about with that. But it is one of the most basic serger stitches there is. And then a 2 thread maybe isn't so basic, but it's becoming more popular. And I talked last time about, if you have an option for serging with 2 threads, you have just expanded your potential. For one thing, if you are a seam finisher, so you're sewing on your regular sewing machine and then you're finishing the raw edges on your serger, having a 2 thread stitch allows you to economize and only have to use 2 cones of serger thread to do that raw edge finishing. And would you agree, Amy, that just like saves a lot of thread?
Saves a lot of thread and a lot of bulk too.
Yeah.
But
Good point. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you can't find serger cone thread. You have a cone handy that you can hold
yes.
up? Okay, that would be a cone, and a normal spool of thread would be, I'll rip one off of my machine right next to me here.
Oh, I got
Would
one.
be something like this. Okay, that's a normal spool of thread. If I can't find a cone, then I buy spools. And if I can do it with 2 threads, only having to buy 2 spools is going to make, all the difference in the world, for sure. For sure. I'm trying to keep tabs a little bit on the comments at the same time that I'm showing this. But so a 2 thread stitch is a great option, and it does give you decorative potential as well. You'll see a little hint of that tonight too. And then a flat lock stitch is something that many people have heard of. Maybe you've done it, let me know if you have. Maybe you've just wondered how you can do it and why you would want to do it. I've got some extra pictures for that. But that's kind of just a little bit of a recap. And then, so when we think about doing anything on the serger, I really wanted to stress the point that you've got certainly, you need to read your manual. You need to learn how to thread it. You need to learn a little bit about adjusting the tension. We could probably do another whole class on that too, or another whole show on that. But basically, these are some of the most important dials that you want to pay attention to. Your stitch length, that controls the spacing between the loops, basically, or the way the stitch forms. So a longer stitching means there's more space between the thread. A shorter stitch length means there's less space between the threads that are laying on the fabric there. The stitch width is basically controlled by the cutting blade. And when the cutting blade is closer to the foot, it creates a more narrow stitch. When the cutting blade is moved further away from the edge of the presser foot, it creates a little bit of a wider stitch. Very minor though. Primarily what the stitch width does is it controls how the loops lay on the edge of the fabric. So whether or not they're hugging the raw edge of the fabric, or whether they're pulling on the edge of the fabric, or whether they're being a little sloppy and laying too far off the edge. Would you kind of want to give your take on what the stitch width and cutting position does, Amy?
Yeah, the stitch width is really what we call bite, B-Y-T-E. And what it does is it changes how much fabric is cut away. If you think you're working with linen and then you turn around and work with like a polar fleece, you have to adjust that blade width to accommodate the thickness of your fabric, as well as, getting a perfect stitch. It's a lot of people don't think to adjust that, but it's one of the better adjustments to understand is how much
Yeah.
fabric's being cut away or not being cut away.
And I have a little sample that's going to show that too. I want to bring up my friend Forrest, his comment though. He uses the 2-thread to baste garments together. Okay, now, Forrest, tell me, I think you're talking about a 2-thread chain stitch. Tell me if I'm wrong. Whereas I was talking about a 2-thread overcasting stitch, but you're right about a 2-thread chain stitch. If that's an option on your serger, that is a great stitch for doing a trial seam, because it rips out just like the old potato sacks, you know,
like dog food bags.
Put that one. Yep, exactly the same thing. So then we'll just get back to the controls. Presser foot pressure. That's a knob at the top of the machine, and there's a dial there, and it just regulates how hard the presser foot is pushing against the fabric, or if it's easing off of it a little bit. That really is dependent a lot on the thickness of your fabric. Amy, do you find yourself changing presser foot pressure very often? Because I don't very often.
I don't either. And I don't want to say it's a slippery slope, but when you have the little knob on top, you need to put a piece of tape on the knob and on your case. So when you turn it, you know where to come back from if it's not numbered. But rarely, I use my differential feed more than I change my presser foot pressure.
Yeah, excellent point. Because if you get off, if you don't have enough pressure, your foot's not going to be able to push your fabric through.
Yes.
If you have too much pressure, it's going to inhibit your fabric from being pushed through. So generally, there's a lot of spring in a serger presser foot, because they spring this way and that way, as well as up and down a little bit. So you don't need presser foot pressure differences as much as you do, as you might think you do. And yeah, Forrest says he's talking about a 2-thread chain stitch. I thought so. Okay, I thought so. And oh, here we got another friend here. Do you happen to know this here person?
that is Ed, and Ed is in charge of everything that isn't creative, the hard stuff. So he posted that link, and he said, yes, you can join the classes anytime. You don't have to wait for an opening for a box. And then when you do want a box, then we can get you in the box situation. But anybody can join just to watch the classes. So
okay, excellent.
Ed popped that up there.
Thank you, Ed. Hi, Ed. Bye, Ed, and thank you.
The poor guy retires, and I'm saying, guess what? I'm going to start this subscription box thing.
And I will be sure to put that link in the notes
fine.
too. So yeah. Okay, so we're moving on then to differential feed, and I did talk in detail about differential feed in the last show, which I will link towards the end of this video once it's all uploads. But differential feed has a normal setting, which is basically on 1, it's feeding the feed dogs that are in 2 sets 1-to-1. If we set it on a higher number, so a higher number than 1, it means the front set of feed dogs is moving faster than the back set. If we set it at a lower number than 1, it means the front set of feed dogs are moving a little slower. So what does that mean? Well, if your feed dogs in front move a little slower than your feed dogs in back, it ends up stretching your fabric a little bit. So it pulls on your fabric. If you have it set so that you're at a higher number and your feed dogs are moving faster in the front than they are in the back, it eases the fabric in. So from just being able to help control a variety of different fabrics to doing gathering and doing lettuce edging. Again, there's kind of like we could do a whole thing on differential feed, but that's the basics of how a differential feed actually works. So moving on then, just some basic tips. When you are doing decorative serging, or you're serging, outside of the normal standard, you want to always do a balanced stitch first. And you do that because if you start putting decorative threads in and everything goes wonky, crazy, and you have no idea what's going on, you're going to wonder if your serger's broke. Right, Amy?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to wonder if something like it, is really wrong with this machine. And it may just be the technique you're doing, or the thread you're using, or the settings you've got. So if you start with a balanced stitch and you do run your fabric through and you get a balanced stitch, we know that the serger is okay, right? She is okay. And if we start making her do something else, she's still okay. She just may not be okay with what we're trying to make her do.
Right.
So think of that. Have you changed your needle? I know serger needles last longer than sewing machine needles. Would you agree, Amy?
Yeah, I think because there's two of them, they're not working, they work a little faster, but the penetration is even because the serger controls it. And you're not pulling like you do on your sewing machine, right? Which we shouldn't do anyway. But I'm just saying the serger is pretty good about hanging on to needles.
Exactly. But it doesn't mean you still shouldn't be changing those needles. So if you can feel it with your fingernail and you feel any little bit of a little glitch there, absolutely throw those needles away and start fresh. If you start hearing a little bit of a popping sound, that's also a kind of a prime signal that it's time to change those needles. And also, if you're getting skip stitches, that's another prime reason to change your needle. Or if you're maybe getting some snags in your fabric. And I know for me in particular, if I'm going to sew on a fine knit, I'm almost always going to start out with fresh needles because I don't want to take any chance of my needle poking a hole in that knit. And when a knit gets a hole poked in it, the chain is broken. It means you're going to have a run. And if you have a run, it could run further than you want it to run and not be a pretty thing. So the other thing I would say is plan on extra thread. So if you are using, some of these decorative threads, they come on nice big spools. So you have a lot of yardage on here, but you are going to use up some thread that is just going to go away from your testing. So expect that. So if you only have a little bit left, you're going to need to buy more because you're going to have to start out with doing some testing.
Right.
One of my best tips ever is always test on long scraps because if you test on a short piece, I don't have a really good example here. Well, I do a little bit here. Okay. Let me just show that a little bit closer. Okay. See those tails that are hanging there? Now they're a little bit long, but there's a reason for that. I'll tell you that in a minute. But every time you are testing, if you're on a short piece, you're chaining from the beginning and chaining at the end, and you're wasting all that thread. So if you use a long strip for your testing, you're going to have less at the beginning and less at the end, and therefore you're going to economize on thread. Sound like a plan?
It's a plan.
Okay, let's talk about keeping the thread from slipping. Yes. Let me go ahead. Let me see if I can bring up. Let's see. Let me see if I can get me in there and show you that just a little bit better. So the thread nets that Amy talked about, that definitely is an option. However, you may want to do a couple things. First of all, you may want to trim that thread net so that it matches your spool. Because if this is larger, a lot of times what happens when the thread comes up through, it kind of gets, see if I can make this happen. Hold on. It kind of gets stuck a little bit in the netting. So sometimes the netting itself can kind of end up snagging that thread. So that's one thing I would suggest. Another thing is just kind of my own crazy idea. I prefer to use these more for storage than anything else. And when I do decorative serging with a thread that has a tendency to spill off like this, instead of a net, what I like to do is I like to take an ordinary cleaning sponge. I like to cut it in a circle, cut a hole in it, and stick it right down over the cone holder so that my spool is now sitting on a sponge, and that sponge prevents that thread from pooling because you can actually wiggle the little end of the spool right into the hole on the sponge, and then that keeps that from dropping down. So
yeah, that's a great tip.
What do you think of my crazy idea there?
Nothing crazy, girl. Let me tell you something. I've done it all. It's awesome.
It works. It definitely works. Okay, let me see if I can bring back both of us. I don't know what I was using there to get both of us on there. Let's see. I think it was that. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Too many buttons, too many controls. So that really definitely works. Absolutely. I recommend trying that. That keeps your thread from slipping. Stitch in an even pace, not too fast. Sergers are known for speed. And when you are doing regular serger seams, you can fly like the wind and there your serger will be perfectly fine. When you're dealing with decorative threads and doing things that are a little more intricate, the slower you go, the more consistently that thread will feed, the more consistent your tension is, and that will make for a more perfect and more consistent stitch all the way through from beginning to end.
I
And then,
agree.
Amy, yeah, you got a great tip there. Make sure you use the needles your manufacturer recommends. Absolutely, that is a wonderful, wonderful tip. Don't want to neglect that. Leave thread tails. Now, I showed you before, I had this piece that had all these thread tails. There's a reason for that. A lot of times when you're doing decorative serging, and you'll see with the flat lock in a minute, you've got what is really a weird tension setting going on. And if you've sometimes get a little bit of drawing up of the edge of the fabric, those thread tails will help you so that you can then smooth out your stitch, just like I'm doing with my finger. If your chain is short, your needle threads are always the shortest one in the chain. And if you pull that and smooth that down and you lose some of this extra chain, you might actually lose the needle thread, which could actually cause your stitch then to fall off the edge and fall apart. So the longer you leave those tails, now you don't have to go crazy, but I always leave a few inches so that I can smooth that out and not worry about losing that needle thread. So that's important. And then remember, when you're doing anything decorative wise and you're trying to get a close stitch like you see here, and I got a better picture of it in a minute, the stitch length will need to be adjusted. So thicker thread requires a little bit of a longer stitch length because the thread itself is going to take up space between the gaps there. If you've got a thinner thread, you're going to probably be adjusting your stitch length a little bit down or a little bit shorter. So thinner thread, thicker thread, longer stitch length, thinner thread, shorter stitch length. Make sense? Okay, so here's another tip for you. And this one I thought I'd show you right in a picture. Whenever and wherever possible, when you're doing any serging, whether it's decorative or functional, try to skim a little bit of the fabric and cut a little bit off. Right, Amy?
Yes.
And why do we do that? I'm going to let you tell everybody.
That's okay. The serger is calibrated to cut. So what happens is when you are skimming what I call the pokies, the raw edge of your fabric, then your threads lay exactly on that line. Your serger is calibrated to cut, right? So that's how those stitch fingers work, holding your thread there for the thread to wrap around, or the fabric to wrap around, and then it cuts clean.
Exactly. And it just gives you the whole formation of the stitch just comes out more perfect when you skim it a little bit. Most of the time I leave my blade up, and you'll see that in a minute too. Jane has a good point here. One thing she had to learn was how to control the speed. Yeah, they do go fast. And so when you are purposefully trying to go a little slower, it takes an effort for sure. Definitely takes an effort. So, and Judy's enjoying the information. Judy, I'm so glad to hear that. That is what we are here for. Okay, so that's what that shows. Now, this is just showing you a balanced 4 thread and a balanced 3 thread. So where you see the red stitches, that is the looking at the serger from the top side, and the blue stitches that you see is looking at the serger from the bottom side. So again, the images that I showed at the very beginning of these pictures show you really clearly what a balanced stitch looks like, but everything is exactly where it should be thread-wise, and the tensions are all perfectly balanced when you have an actual balanced stitch, of course. So that's what we want to strive for at the beginning. And then this is what it looks like a little bit. And it's a little, I wish you could be in my sewing space with me and I could show you these, close up, because pictures just, are a little hard when it comes to this type of thing. But when in that first picture on the left, when my cutting width or my tension possibly even needed to be adjusted a little bit, I see that I've got the loops are hanging off and kind of hanging off in the air. And that usually means that either my loopers need to be tweaked just a little bit, tension tightened just a little bit, or my cutting width needs to be moved with that blade away from the foot. So I'm getting a little bit of a wider bite, like Amy said, BYTE, I think you said, Amy.
Yep.
Yeah, that allows more fabric to form within the stitch so that you have, your stitch full of fabric and don't have thread hanging off in midair. So on the right-hand one, it is when I adjusted it. And in that case, I really didn't even change the tension at all. I just simply adjusted the cutting width dial for that. Okay, so next, we'll just go through the rest of these real quick. This is what your stitch looks like if you adjust it for a flat lock stitch. And when you do a flat lock stitch, again, the top on this one is red, the lower side or the bottom side is yellow. And when you do a flat lock stitch, you want to have a very, very loose needle tension, kind of a basic upper looper tension, and generally a little tighter lower looper tension. Would you agree with that assessment, Amy?
Yep, it's all about the needle. The needle doesn't, and if the lower looper and the upper looper don't let the needle lay flat, then that's the problem. But usually I don't have any tension in my upper looper or my needle.
Okay. And so in the needle is the yellow thread there, and you can see it should form a literal, like a V shape when it's properly set for a flat lock, because other than, when we want to sew a seam, we want that to lock at the needle line. In this case, we want it to go all the way over to the raw edge so that we can get a flat stitch. So there's a finished flat lock stitch where I show in the red, it's the loop side. And then the yellow is what we call the ladder side, right, Amy?
Yes.
Loops and ladders, kind of. Isn't there a children's game, something like that?
I think it's Chutes and Ladders. This is an adult sewing game. Yes.
Makes me think of that. Oh, Anne, thank you. I'd love to sew with you too. Maybe we'll get a chance to do that together someday for sure. And Judy's enjoying the information. That's great. But again, so when you've got that tension properly set, that's what it should look like. And I like to do what you see on the bottom little sample there, which is run ribbon. I usually buy like 1/8 inch wide ribbon, and I use a tapestry needle. Yeah. And I like to run it underneath those ladder stitches. You can skip every other ladder if you want to. Amy, have you done any of that?
Yeah,
in your class?
We just did it in the May class with the 2-thread with the yellow ribbon. So flat locking has a ton of purposes. It's very underrated.
Why don't you show that sample again, just so they can get a little closer.
All right, so here it is here. I don't know why it's so dark, but that's a flat lead using that spaghetti thread that I used. And then we just wove some yellow ribbon through it. So it's, flat locking is underrated for garment construction, for decorative work. I love to attach laces to edges. Lace edges.
Yeah. I've got some samples for that too. Again, I think we could do another whole session just on flat locking.
Exactly.
So the other key to doing a flat lock is to have the stitch basically form about half on the fabric and half off. And that does vary a little bit depending on the weight and the thickness and the stiffness of your fabric. But again, you're going to want to do a test. And if you see what I did there, once I get it down to the right spot, like how far away it should be from the edge so that I'm stitching about half on and half off, I use a little tiny Post-it note, and I stick it on my machine, and I use that as my edge guide. Do you have any particular cool tips that you use?
The Post-it note's a great tip. I also use my adjustable blind hem foot, and I'll move that guide over so I know exactly where my fabric needs to go.
Yeah, that's a good one. I got another picture of that coming up in a few slides. So that's a perfect way to do it too, for sure. So last time I highlighted this project just a little bit amongst many of them. So if you want some inspiration, make sure you watch that previous video. And I do want to make sure that I don't neglect to ask you to if you can like this video on YouTube, that would help an awful lot. It will make it so that more people get a chance to watch it, for one thing, and more people can enjoy it. It would certainly make me happy if you would like to do that. And if you would subscribe, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications. And I do really appreciate everybody who's watching, both live and on the replay. So if you're watching on Facebook, I appreciate you being there. If you're watching on YouTube, I appreciate you watching here too, whether you're watching live or watching the replay. It's just great to have you. Great to have you here. All right. So the next one is just showing just exactly what you were talking about. In this particular project, I used a flat lock to do the hem of that t-shirt. And that t-shirt project is on the Brother Stitching social site. And I'll link that in the show notes so you can find it. But I show you how to construct a t-shirt entirely on the serger using what I call the fast flat method. And using the flat lock stitch for the hem just makes it really, really neat. And using that blind hem foot, like you said, Amy, is a great guide. So you can see there how I'm using that to get the stitch to form right where I need it. So that's kind of what it looks like before I pull it. There's again those V thread, the V from the needle thread. So we know that that's going to pull. So when I pull that, on the left is what it would look like on the right side of the garment. Naturally, I wouldn't use a yellow thread unless I wanted to for a particular reason. But that just shows you the contrast. And then you can see what the hem looks like on the inside. So it's all hemmed, it's all finished. And when it's pulled flat, it's just a really nice, neat way to go. So what about a 2-thread stitch? Well, again, I talked about before about a 2-thread stitch being a great option just for overcasting. But if you use a 2-thread, if you have the opportunity to use a 2-thread stitch, you can use it to do a flat lock. And the stitch that you see there on the left is a standard setup for a 2-thread stitch without playing funny things with the tension. That's what a 2-thread stitch should look like. And if you look, you see the upper side is the blue, the lower side is the yellow. That yellow are those exact same little V's that form that we have to do a lot of finagling to do with a 3-thread stitch, right, Amy? Isn't it harder to get it to do that with 3 threads? Mm-hmm. With 2, it's much easier. So if you do have that option, you're basically, all you have to do again is stitch half on and half off, and it's going to flatten out real nice. Now, what happens if you're stitching a little bit too much on the fabric or not quite enough? Well, the picture on the right, if you look at the sample that's on the, underneath the top one, I have one area there where you can see a little bit of the fabric tunneling. That's when you've stitched too far onto the fabric and there's not enough thread hanging off. And then on the opposite, again, hard to see, but my thread's a little too loopy there. That's if you're leaving a little bit too much thread hanging off. So that's why the sweet spot is usually about half on and half off. And that's what I was able to achieve on that final sample that's laying on top. So we did get to talk a little bit about decorative threads. You had the 12 weight spaghetti thread that you sell in your store, Amy.
Yeah, the glamour spaghetti, a little bit of everything. So.
Yeah, I'm waiting to get some samples of that. So the closest thing I had was some dime 15 weight thread.
Right, that works great too.
Which is actually a special vintage style embroidery thread they have for certain embroidery designs through one of their software programs called Vintage Stitch. But it works great in the serger. So you can see I used a spool of black and a spool of green and did it on the pre-quilted fabric. Again, the black is the upper side, the green is the lower side. The whole key when you use a 3-thread wide stitch, and that means we're removing the right needle, we're using only the left needle, and you use decorative thread, thick, nice, beautiful thread, it gives you really good coverage and it looks almost identical on both the top side and the bottom side. So this is the same little sample that I'm showing there. So that Wonder Fill, the Dazzle thread, it's got just that little bit of sparkle Same thing with that sample on the pre-quilted. So think of the placemats that you could make, sewing machine covers, table runners. Boy, I mean, just, when you have double-faced quilted fabric and you have a serger and you have some decorative threads, you can zip right around those
Make
and
anything.
do just about anything.
Yep.
Another question I get a lot, I think I get one more picture here. Yeah. I get asked this question a lot is how do you surge from, like on a circle or an oval or anything where you've got a beginning and an end that you have to match up. And I went into more detail on this in a previous video, but basically you're starting out, and I'll link to this project as well, which was another Brother Stitching Social blog project that I do. I do a couple projects for them regularly. And with that particular one, I used a woolly nylon type thread, which I'm going to let you talk about woolly nylon in a second, Amy. But when you do that, you need to start with the finger cleared of threads, and then you need to end by clearing that finger as well, so that you can have an almost imperceptible place where it joins there. Again, that project shows you exactly how to do that. But give me your thoughts on woolly nylon, Amy.
So stretch thread, and every manufacturer has its own name for it, let's say.
Yeah.
So Maxi Lock has stretch thread, and it is like if you were going to make your own pantyhose, if you were going to crochet your own pantyhose, it's kind of what it looks like, because when it's taut, it's super thin, like a thin weight, and then it gets this hefty fluffiness to it. So it's beautiful for roll hems because it just expands when you sew and fills in all the right, fills in every stitch. I was looking for a sample. But the other thing I like to do with it, when I'm making my t-shirts, when I'm making my leggings, when I'm making baby clothes, I love it because it stretches. I'll even use it in the bobbin of my sewing machine if I'm doing a twin needle to help have some elasticity with the thread. But I probably have it in every color. And usually it goes in the upper looper. You can use it both in the upper and lower looper. And depending on your serger, maybe the needle. Not all sergers respond well to this thread in the needle. And you're going to have to play with your tensions a little bit, just because, not that it's thicker, but what happens is when it stretches, it kind of tightens itself towards the back of the tension assembly. So it likes to get a little tighter in there than a normal thread would.
Yeah, you're right. And it really, it's one of the most popular threads for doing a rolled hem. Now, you want to see something a little out of the box? I'll get
Absolutely.
you a close-up look at my sleeve here.
Oh, that's so pretty.
This jacket was created by taking strips, see if I can get my finger under one of them, of chambray fabric, and using a woolly type thread so that it would give me good coverage, and doing a rolled hem, finishing all of the strips like that. I actually did it even on the binding so that I didn't have to, turn under the binding. That could be finished that way. And then I did some patchwork blocks, if I could, with a thicker, heavier thread, one that would be more like the 12 weight, and just did some chain stitch and some cover hem. And Forrest asked a little earlier if I was going to do something separate on the cover hem. Hang tight, Forrest. We'll get there eventually. I'm trying to kind of plod my way through this a little bit methodically, but I want to bring up a few comments, Amy, that came through while we were talking. Anne can't wait to make her own t-shirt with the serger techniques. And it is so fast.
It's a great way to start.
It works. It is. It's a great thing to do. And especially too, because t-shirts generally don't need a lot of fitting, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have to be as particular. And I don't know if you would agree with this advice, but a lot of times I'll say, if you want to do something and you are a little bit more concerned about the fit for yourself, but you want to get some practice, make some children's clothes. And if you don't have any child to give it to yourself, I bet you any money there's somewhere in your community that is looking for children's clothes, whether it's a church group or someplace where they collect donations. And you could just do a wonderful thing by making some really cute kids clothes and donating them. You get the practice and somebody else gets the smiles and the joy from wearing it. So
that's a great idea. And even with like leftover cottons, we do placemats for Meals on Wheels for the holidays because they just need one or maybe two, and they don't care that the decorative stitching isn't perfect. They have a beautiful holiday placemat, and they know someone's thinking about them. So
yeah.
your shut-ins and things like that. It's just there's so many good things we can do, and the sewing and quilting community is amazing. They're very giving.
You're so right. That's one of the wonderful things about it, for sure. Yeah. Amy, Barbara wants to know, do you drop the blade when you do the 2-thread flat lock? I generally don't. You tell me what you do.
So I always laugh when I say this. I'm a trained professional. So I do take my blade away. Jim does not take his blade away. When you take your blade away, your loopers, as they cross, that blade makes sure that that fabric is missing before it gets in there. If you don't pay attention and your fabric doesn't cut, that fabric goes up over, the upper looper grabs it and snaps it off. And I will tell you, it's probably one of the most expensive repairs is to have your loopers replaced. So the answer is very cautiously,
yeah,
you lower that blade.
Yeah. You're right. The safest thing to do is to remove the blade, because you'd rather cut the fabric than hurt your serger. But I guess I would say that if you do flat locking more than just a few times and you kind of know the drill, you're going to know you never go anywhere near that blade.
Right.
You're not getting there, so you're okay then to leave it to leave it up. But that's a good thing, because we don't want this to be a cautionary tale, right?
Yes.
Christy says, "Yikes!" And Jane's going to want to rewatch this. Yeah, we've gone about 90 minutes here, but there's just was so much to cover for sure. Sherry liked the jacket. Thank you, Sherry. And I had a question here about the sponge. Sherry, I tell you what I'll do. I'm going to make a blog post. So if you're on my email list, I'll go ahead and run my website across there. So that's where you sign up for my tips and tricks. And I send out a note every weekend giving you some good information and telling you what's up and what's happening. But I will do a blog post combining the last Serger show and this one with just some highlights and some extra photos. And I will take a picture of the sponge tip so that you can see that on there, because I don't have anything to show you right here. So let's see. Paula says she has trouble using woolly in her lower looper. It always breaks. Why don't you talk a little bit about why some threads don't work in some machines or in some places, Amy? What's your thoughts on that?
So a lot of it, the manufacturers preset the tensions, right? So we know the lower looper is always tighter than the upper looper because it's kind of the bully. It pulls everybody to the edge and makes it work harder. So the lower looper, especially, you're going to have to adjust your tension down, probably 2 numbers. So if 4 is normal, you're probably going to go to 2. So you probably need to adjust it a little bit. But the other thing that happens if your lower looper, again, is the first one that grabs a pin, the first one that grabs an edge of a zipper. If you get a burr on your lower looper, especially the eye, then, or if you have like a little wear spot, that's what will eventually shred that thread and break it.
Okay.
So that's, that's an unfortunate thing, but the lower looper is the tight one.
It could be the issue. And I also find that I failed to mention it before, but it would be good to add into the bullet list there, is when you do adjust your tensions, every serger's different. Some are super, super, super sensitive tensions. Yeah. Some you can't even adjust. I know there are those out there where they're not, you're just locked into whatever stitch setting that they give you. Though that's a little tricky for me because I'm always used to, playing around with the dials. But when you do adjust the dials, would you agree that you want to do it about a quarter to a half turn at a time?
Yeah, don't go crazy and only do one at a time. So turn one knob and then see what did it do. And then if that didn't fix it, put it back to itself, turn the next knob until you kind of figure that out. But definitely just one tension adjustment at a time. And like I said, normally the the lower looper is usually the culprit.
Yeah. If it's and it could be a timing issue too.
Yes.
The sergers do sometimes go out of time and need a
Right.
little bit of adjustment.
Or the needle will drop, right? So you think the needle's up all the way, but it's not. And then that needle ticks off that lower looper and then it becomes a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Jane, for looking forward to the emails. I look forward to writing them every weekend because I really feel like I'm able to connect with a whole lot of friends all at one time when I do that. So Deborah really enjoyed all the info and tips. So I'm so glad to hear that. I think we've probably covered a lot of bases tonight. And
a ton of stuff. Holy cow. We could probably do this every day for like a month and still like not get everything your serger does do. So,
and we'd never stop having fun either, would we?
Yeah.
Oh, Amy, this has been great. So I just want to thank you for being here, for joining me, joining everybody else here. Thank you, everyone, for for watching. It's just been, as usual, a really, really fun time, and we both appreciate having all of you here. And I appreciate having Amy as a friend. And if you need anything, absolutely, let me bring up Amy's website again, so you know where to get in touch with her.
And thank you for everybody. I'm still on West Coast time. So I think I've been up like 18 hours. So I apologize. I seem a little spacey today, but I'm getting there.
That makes it even more wonderful that you spent some time here with us.
Oh my gosh. So. As creators, we can't do what we do and what we love without people on the other side. So it's so appreciative.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess it's time to say goodbye. And I will, again, always, as usual, I love to tell everybody that I not only appreciate you, but I wish you a world full of pretty stitches. So bye-bye and happy sewing.
Bye, everybody.